Today at Nice Medical Affairs, we are digitalizing medical affairs with our next guest, Rob Stevens. I promise a unique conversation and some very interesting insights, so let's start with our very first question. You are one of the global pioneers when it comes digital medical affairs, so why did Pharma act so slow into moving digital in from perspective of medical affairs?
That's a really important question that we need to ask. Why is it medical affairs responded late with ramping up its digital efforts when the rest of the industry and the rest of the organizations were much further ahead in terms of its digital evolution? One could easily think about medical affairs being known as a risk-averse organization. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but historically it's been known to be. People might say, well, there's a firewall between commercial and medical, which reduces what medical can do. I don't necessarily agree. I see the opportunity there. But really what matters is not why it's late, but what it could do to be more effective in its digital transformation, because there's so much opportunity and potential that medical affairs has with digital and data. So I would think about it from that perspective. Sure, medical might be a little bit late, but where can it go from here?
Thanks a lot, Rob, for this great answer. My next question would be, what are the opportunities of digital medical affairs and how this will evolve in the future?
Dario, that's an awesome question. When I think about the evolution of digital medical affairs, there's 5 critical areas that I think about quite often. The first, organizations must develop a data-driven omnichannel engagement model that incorporates both digital and analog channels. That's critically important because most organizations think about omnichannel being synonymous with digital, and it isn't necessarily, it doesn't have to be. Congresses, face-to-face interactions are all vital aspects of a comprehensive omnichannel strategy. But the important aspect is how can data drive that omnichannel engagement? If you're doing omnichannel and you don't have data driving those decisions, it's an effort made in vain. The second area is tech empowering field medical organizations. MSLs are critical, they're essential, high touch, high science, high value, but are they empowered with the right technology, data, and platforms to force multiply the effort and impact they can have? Organizations must ask themselves that question because the reality is so much opportunity exists out there for MSLs to be even more impactful if they can right size the use cases of how digital can help them. The third area is connected health. There's so much opportunity for medical affairs to really dig its teeth into connected health and help the organizations grow their models, grow their strategies. But we need to make sure that MSLs have the right training, that the organizations have the right structures, but connected health represents a huge opportunity for medical affairs to really get more involved in. The fourth area is digital health literacy. And that probably underpins the entire aspect of medical affairs digital strategy. You can have the most effective digital strategy in the world, but if you're missing the boat on digital health literacy, it's also an effort made in vain. So it's internal and external. How do you make sure you upskill your medical affairs organizations with digital so they can really understand how to effectively use it? And how do you make sure that your external world, your HCPs, for example, that they're digitally health literate? You could go out the most exciting VR, AR, MR, HR, MOA, or POD, but if it's going to someone that doesn't necessarily understand how to use it, it's not going to be impactful. So medical affairs organizations must ramp up digital health literacy. The fifth area is external partnering within the tech sector and specifically startups. Some of the greatest innovations I've come across are from startup companies that often are founded by people, HCPs, that have become frustrated and overwhelmed by the healthcare systems, and they became so impassioned that they started a company to change things. So I think we need to think about partnerships, academia, of course, hospitals, sure, but medical affairs organizations have to think about how they can expand their partnering models within the tech sector and specifically startups. When you look towards the future, there's 2 things I think medical affairs organizations need to pay attention to. The first one is, how do you increase the focus on measuring value, extracting value, and telling that story? You can have a really fantastic medical affairs, digital and data strategy, but organizations, enterprises, senior management are going to want to know what is the value. Sure, medical cannot look at script data. However, it can look at real world data to further illustrate the impact it's having with its digital data efforts. The other area is compliance. My observations of the industry have been that we ramp up digital data, but the compliance piece has to be there as well. If you think about something as explosive as Chat GPT and the impact it can and will have on healthcare, on pharma, etc., how do pharma companies get ahead of it and medical affairs organizations to make sure that they're being proactive with compliance and not reactive? That's the right position to be in. Let's be proactive, make sure we have the right structures, processes, WPDs, SOPs in place to support the explosive growth that digital has in medical affairs.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks. And last question for today. Do you see the need that we commercialize medical affairs with the very same mistake like we did in commercial?
Dario, I think what you're asking is how can medical affairs and commercial best collaborate to minimize mistakes being made, given the fact that both functions are rapidly evolving their digital transformation? That's a very fair question to ask. Sure, I can give you textbook answers. Establish a RACI chart, ways of working, make sure legal compliance, regulatory are in a room together. But the reality is that the first question that needs to be asked is who? Who needs to be in the room to then define what we're doing and who owns what pieces of the pie? And I'll give you a specific example. Under a digital strategy for an organization will be omni-channel engagement. Commercial has a large piece, medical has a large piece, but what about development? If you're currently working at a pharma organization, you need to ask yourself, does my development organization have an omni-channel engagement strategy? It might not, it probably doesn't. But that's my point. Development needs to join forces with medical and commercial to establish a robust omni-channel engagement strategy for that enterprise. The same applies for connected health. Medical, commercial, and development must be there together to define ways of working, who owns what piece, etc. So, there's two things I'm pointing out to you, Dario. The first one is, who needs to be there is the right question to ask first. And that's super important before anyone talks about how to work best together and not make mistakes. The second thing is capabilities and expertise. Commercial medical development must have the right players on the team that understand these emerging technologies and digital effectively to then be able to deploy them. I've often seen a case where, let's just say, a medical organization puts someone in from field medical in a digital role. That person may love things that are technologically forward, but they may not have a good appreciation for human behavior, and now that can hinder adoption of technology. So let me give another example. When I interview candidates, I often ask, for pathway of disease or mechanism of action, which would you recommend? VR, HR, AR, MR? And that's virtual reality, haptic reality, mixed reality, or augmented reality. The question is really testing how well do people understand the technology differences, as well as what is the right application, what's that thought process. If people can't answer that question, then they probably shouldn't be in a role deploying digital tactics. Because without having a digital understanding of the technology, it's really what I often call reactive innovation and not proactive innovation. People are reacting to these buzzwords around augmented reality, but not really being proactive to understand what is needed to deploy it effectively. And so I would really draw your attention, Dario, to those two things. If medical and commercial are going to work together effectively, first question, do we have the right players at the table to make the right decisions? So obviously include development. And that second component of how to work effectively together is to make sure you have the right capabilities, the right expertise, you have the right players at the table that can be effective in what they do. Hope that helps.
That was a very tough question and I appreciate the answer. So thanks a lot, Robert, and take very good care.